They sold us glamour, they sold us romance. But in the golden age of Hollywood, love came with rules, and breaking them could destroy you. In the Jim Crow era, interracial relationships weren't just scandalous. In 17 states, they were illegal until 1967. Studios feared boycotts, so they policed their stars' private lives as ruthlessly as they managed their films. Publicists staged fake romances for the press. Gossip columnists were paid to print distractions. Real love stories were erased before they could make headlines. If you were black, dating a white celebrity could cost you your career. If you were white, falling for a black star could get you pulled from films, or worse. Sometimes it wasn't just studios applying pressure, it was the mob. But a few couples didn't play along. They met in secret, dodged the cameras, and risked everything to be together. Some survived the scrutiny, others were torn apart, and a few paid a price so steep that it changed their lives forever. These romances were whispered about, denied, and buried in the footnotes of Hollywood history. Today, we're pulling them back into the spotlight, because in old Hollywood, loving the wrong person wasn't just controversial, it was the most dangerous role you could play. On screen, Dorothy Dandridge was electric, the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar for Carmen Jones. Hailed as Hollywood's answer to Lena Horne. Off-screen, she was living a love story that could have ended her career, and eventually did. She met Otto Preminger, the Austrian-born white director, on the set of Carmen Jones in 1954. Preminger was powerful, sophisticated, and exactly the kind of man the studio system didn't want her near. Interracial relationships in the mid-1950s were still illegal in many states, and even in Hollywood, the stigma was brutal. Black actresses were told in no uncertain terms, "Don't be seen with white men." The price was too high, but Dorothy and Otto didn't listen. Their relationship began quietly, away from the cameras, with secret dinners and unpublicized getaways. Preminger encouraged her to push for more challenging roles and avoid the maid and mammy parts Hollywood tried to hand her. He saw her as more than a stereotype, but he also knew the risk of being openly linked to her. The danger wasn't just public gossip. Studios actively discouraged the relationship, warning Dorothy that high-profile white romances could destroy her bankability in both white and black audiences. Still, they stayed together and for 6 turbulent years. The trouble was, Preminger was also known for being controlling. He insisted Dorothy turn down roles he thought were beneath her, but in a racist industry, that meant she turned down almost everything. The result? Long gaps between films, shrinking opportunities, and whispers in the press about her difficult career. When their relationship finally ended, Dorothy was left without the safety net a powerful director once provided, and with fewer roles than ever. She had risked public scandal, defied the unspoken racial codes of the era, and paid in the currency Hollywood valued most, steady work. By the 1960s, Dorothy was taking nightclub gigs to pay her bills. She died in 1965 at just 42 years old. While her romance with Otto Preminger is often painted as glamorous, the truth is it was dangerous, not just to her reputation, but to her survival in an industry that punished black women for loving across the color line. In the late 1950s, Sammy Davis Jr. was one of the most famous entertainers in America, a singer, dancer, and Rat Pack showman who could own any stage. Kim Novak was Columbia Pictures' Golden Girl, a blonde bombshell and one of the top box office draws of the era. They were both at the peak of their careers when they fell for each other. And in segregated America, a black man dating a white woman, especially one as famous as Novak, was seen as scandalous enough to ruin them both. They met through mutual friends in Hollywood's tight social circles and quickly began seeing each other in secret. But nothing stayed secret for long in that town. Soon, gossip columnists started whispering, and word got back to Harry Cohn, the notoriously controlling head of Columbia Pictures. Cohn didn't just dislike the match, he saw it as a threat to Novak's career and the studio's profits. What happened next crossed the line from industry interference to outright menace. According to multiple accounts, including friends of both stars, Cohn called in mob connections to put an end to the romance. Sammy was allegedly confronted by mobsters and told, in no uncertain terms, to leave Novak alone or risk serious harm. The pressure was relentless. Sammy, fearing for his life and Novak's career, agreed to end things. But the breakup wasn't clean. Novak was furious at how she'd been manipulated, and Sammy felt humiliated. Not long after, he entered a whirlwind relationship with black dancer Lorraine White, marrying her in a quick ceremony many believe was orchestrated to defuse the Novak scandal. The marriage lasted only months. The Novak romance became one of Hollywood's most infamous what-ifs, a love story derailed by racism, studio control, and organized crime. Sammy would go on to break barriers in entertainment, and Kim continued her acting career, but both remained tight-lipped about the relationship for decades. In later interviews, Sammy admitted he'd been in love with her and that the fear was real. Kim called him a wonderful man, but avoided details. The truth is, in 1950s Hollywood, love between a black man and a white woman wasn't just taboo. It was dangerous enough to require a mob warning to keep it from happening. By the late 1950s, Harry Belafonte was more than just a singer. He was the king of calypso, a civil rights activist, and one of the first black entertainers to cross over into mainstream Hollywood fame. Joan Collins was Britain's hottest export, a rising actress with smoldering looks and a reputation for stealing scenes. They met at a time when both were young, beautiful, and constantly in the public eye. Rumors suggest they first crossed paths at a high-profile party in New York, where they talked for hours. Friends claimed their chemistry was instant, but there was one big problem. In 1950s Hollywood, a black man dating a white actress, especially one on the brink of stardom, was a scandal waiting to happen. The romance, by all accounts, was real. They went on quiet dinners, exchanged handwritten letters, and met in private homes to avoid paparazzi. But despite their caution, whispers made it into the gossip columns. Close friends denied anything serious, and publicists for both worked overtime to downplay the connection. The studios had too much riding on Collins' career to risk a Southern boycott. For Belafonte, this was familiar territory. He had faced racial prejudice throughout his career, from segregated venues to being warned against public displays of affection with white co-stars. For Collins, the scrutiny was new and uncomfortable. While she reportedly admired Belafonte's charm and intelligence, the pressure was unrelenting. Eventually, the constant need for secrecy took its toll. The romance fizzled, though both remained friendly in public. Years later, Collins would speak highly of Belafonte in interviews, calling him wonderful and ahead of his time. Belafonte, always discreet, never went into detail, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of habit learned from surviving Hollywood's racial politics. Their story wasn't marked by mob threats or dramatic showdowns, but by the quiet, exhausting reality of trying to have a relationship the world refused to accept. It's a reminder that in old Hollywood, not every interracial romance ended in scandal. Some simply faded away under the weight of secrecy. Lena Horne was one of the most glamorous and groundbreaking entertainers of the 20th century, a singer and actress who fought her way through Hollywood's rigid racial barriers. Lennie Hayton was an accomplished white band leader and music director at MGM with deep connections in the industry. They met in the 1940s, when Horne was under contract at MGM and Hayton was one of the studio's top musical minds. At first, their relationship was purely professional. Hayton arranged and conducted music for some of Horne's performances, and they developed an easy rapport. But as they spent more time together, a romance began to bloom, one that was nearly impossible to live openly. In 1947, Lena Horne and Lennie Hayton quietly married in Paris, far from the watchful eyes of the American press. They did it overseas for a reason. In many states back home, their marriage would have been illegal under anti-miscegenation laws. Even in liberal cities, a black woman married to a white man could face social ostracism, career sabotage, or worse. For years, the couple kept their marriage out of the spotlight. MGM executives feared public backlash, particularly from Southern theater owners, so they rarely appeared together in promotional materials. Horne herself later admitted that part of her decision to marry Hayton was strategic. He had the clout to help her navigate Hollywood's racist casting system and avoid the demeaning roles offered to most black actresses at the time. But secrecy came with its own cost. Horne endured hate mail, threats, and whispers from industry insiders who disapproved. Hayton, though powerful, was sometimes accused of being opportunistic, with critics questioning his motives. Both faced the strain of living two lives, one for the public and one in private. Despite the obstacles, Lena and Lenny remained married until his death in 1971. In interviews, Horne spoke candidly about the complexities of their union, acknowledging both the love they shared and the political reality that shaped it. Their marriage was more than just a personal commitment. It was a quiet act of defiance in an era determined to keep love within color lines. Lena Horne was one of the most glamorous and groundbreaking entertainers of the 20th century, a singer and actress who fought her way through Hollywood's rigid racial barriers. Lennie Hayton was an accomplished white band leader and music director at MGM with deep connections in the industry. They met in the 1940s when Horne was under contract at MGM and Hayton was one of the studio's top musical minds. At first, their relationship was purely professional. Hayton arranged and conducted music for some of Horne's performances, and they developed an easy rapport. But as they spent more time together, a romance began to bloom, one that was nearly impossible to live openly. In 1947, Lena Horne and Lennie Hayton quietly married in Paris, far from the watchful eyes of the American press. They did it overseas for a reason. In many states back home, their marriage would have been illegal under anti-miscegenation laws. Even in liberal cities, a black woman married to a white man could face social ostracism, career sabotage, or worse. For years, the couple kept their marriage out of the spotlight, but secrecy came with its own cost. Horne endured hate mail, threats, and whispers from industry insiders who disapproved. Hayton, though powerful, was sometimes accused of being opportunistic, with critics questioning his motives. Both faced the strains of living two lives, one for the public and one in private. Despite the obstacles, Lena and Lenny remained married until his death in 1971. In interviews, Horne spoke candidly about the complexities of their union, acknowledging both the love they shared and the political reality that shaped it. Their marriage was more than just a personal commitment, it was a quiet act of defiance in an era determined to keep love within color lines. Eartha Kitt was the definition of irresistible, a singer, actress, and provocateur with a purr in her voice and a sharp wit that could slice through any room. By the late 1950s, she was an international star, adored in Europe and America alike. Charles Revson was the founder of Revlon, one of the most powerful cosmetics companies in the world. He was rich, connected, and very, very white. Their paths crossed in the glittering world of New York high society. Revson was known for surrounding himself with glamorous women, but Eartha wasn't just another beauty on his arm. She was a woman who had built her own name and brand. The two were spotted together at charity galas, private dinners, and art openings, sparking whispers in society pages. In the era's racial climate, their pairing was pure headline material. Interracial romance among Hollywood celebrities was scandal enough. In the business elite, it was almost unthinkable. Revson's wealth and influence didn't protect them from gossip, it just made the whispers more vicious. Some social circles quietly stopped inviting Eartha, while others turned cold to Revson, fearing the association might upset his company's predominantly white customer base. Neither publicly confirmed the romance, but insiders say it was more than casual. Revson reportedly lavished Kitt with expensive gifts and helped open doors in business ventures outside of entertainment. Eartha, for her part, enjoyed the lifestyle but refused to be a silent arm candy. She remained outspoken about racial injustice, a trait that made her a target of FBI surveillance later in her career. Like many high-profile romances in that era, this one eventually faded. Whether it ended because of social pressure, conflicting priorities, or simple incompatibility, the details remain private. Both went on to have other relationships, but their time together left a mark in gossip lore. In the coded language of the press, their story was framed as unlikely companionship or intriguing friendship, but to those who knew them, it was exactly what it looked like. A high-profile interracial romance lived just far enough in the shadows to survive the era's prejudices. By the late 1960s, Diahann Carroll was already making history. She'd become the first black woman to star in her own TV series, Julia, playing a nurse in a groundbreaking role that broke away from the usual Hollywood stereotypes. Across the Atlantic, David Frost was Britain's most famous TV host, known for his quick wit, political interviews, and charm that made him a star on both sides of the ocean. They met during one of Carroll's visits to London, introduced at a party filled with media and theater elites. Their connection was immediate. Frost, with his sophisticated British humor, was smitten by Carroll's elegance and intelligence. Carroll admired Frost's intellect and the way he carried himself in a room. But this was no ordinary celebrity romance. It was an interracial relationship in the glare of two different countries' press corps. In the UK, they were photographed at West End theater openings, private dinners, and society events. British tabloids reported on the pairing with a mix of fascination and veiled racism, often framing Carroll as exotic or Frost as controversial for dating her. In the US, where Carroll was a household name, the coverage was even trickier. American magazines played it safe, referring to their relationship without showing photos or omitting it entirely to avoid upsetting certain markets. The relationship lasted several years and was serious enough that marriage rumors swirled more than once. Carroll would later admit in interviews that she and Frost discussed it, but faced enormous pressure, not just from the public, but from the realities of their separate demanding careers on opposite sides of the ocean. Ultimately, the combination of long-distance work commitments and the constant scrutiny proved too much. They broke up amicably, remaining friends for decades. In her memoir, Carroll remembered Frost fondly, calling him an extraordinary man and a dear friend to the end. Their romance may not have ended in a wedding, but it was a rare example of a high-profile interracial relationship carried on relatively openly during an era when most were forced into secrecy. In both Britain and America, it challenged expectations and proved that, sometimes even in the most scrutinized spotlight, love could be visible. Nat King Cole was one of the most beloved entertainers in America, a jazz pianist turned velvet-voiced crooner whose music crossed racial lines in a segregated era. Barbara Stanwyck was Hollywood royalty, known for her tough independent screen persona and a career that had made her one of the highest-paid actresses in the world. By the 1950s, both were fixtures in the industry, but in very different worlds. Rumors of a romantic link between Cole and Stanwyck first surfaced in Hollywood gossip columns in the mid-1950s. They were spotted together at private industry parties, charity galas, and the occasional dinner at exclusive Los Angeles restaurants. To the public, these could be dismissed as two stars enjoying the same social circles. But within the closed ranks of studio insiders, whispers suggested something more intimate was unfolding. If true, the pairing was a powder keg in the climate of the time. Cole was a black man who had already faced open hostility. In 1956, a white supremacist mob attacked him on stage in Birmingham, Alabama. Stanwyck, while known for her independent streak, had to navigate an industry where even being seen too often in the company of a black colleague could spark scandal. For both, a confirmed interracial romance would have been professional suicide. Biographers have treated the story cautiously. Some cite unnamed friends who claim the two enjoyed a brief but genuine romantic connection. Others dismiss it as exaggerated gossip. What's certain is that Stanwyck was a known supporter of civil rights causes and admired Cole's artistry. Cole, for his part, spoke warmly of Stanwyck in interviews, calling her one of the most gracious women in Hollywood. If there was a romance, it was conducted entirely in the shadows. No photographs, no public dates, no direct confirmation from either star. That secrecy itself speaks volumes. In an era when a simple photograph could destroy careers, discretion was the only survival strategy. Whether a fleeting fling or a close friendship misinterpreted by the rumor mill, the Nat King, Cole, Barbara, Stanwyck connection remains one of Hollywood's most tantalizing what-ifs. It's a reminder of how many stories from the golden age, especially those crossing the color line, were either buried or rewritten to protect reputations. And in the absence of confirmation, the truth lives somewhere between the whispers and the admiration they clearly shared for each other, to prove that even in Hollywood's most segregated era, love found a way. They faced whispers, headlines, and real danger, but their stories still shine through. Remember them, because they remind us the heart doesn't care about rules, only about who it beats for.